Welcome to A View to a Grill. I'm Johnny. Today we're going to smoke an overnight brisket on the Z-Grill's multitasker. It's still early in the day and the first thing we're going to do is trim our brisket. We're just going to be doing a backyard trim so that we can get the most yield out of this brisket. I'm just going to focus on the fat cap and try to get that down to 1/4 of an inch. And when I flip that over, I'm just going to remove any of this silver skin that might prevent my seasoning from penetrating the meat. And when I was done, I had a trimmed brisket that looked like this. Now it's time to season our brisket. I'm just going to be using my own SPG plus OP mix, which will be in the show more below. I like to start off my seasoning with the edges first. Once I have the edges seasoned, I'll then season the entire top of the brisket. And take a look at this. I've used literally half of that bottle so far. Now once I have it flipped over, I'll touch up the edges and then season the entire fat cap of the brisket. And then next, take a look at the brisket, see if there's any thin spots, and then get it touched up with whatever seasoning you have remaining. And there you go. I used every bit of seasoning I had in my container. There still may be some thin spots on this fatty area, but I think we're going to go ahead and go with what we have. Now I'll just get that into the refrigerator where it's just going to set up until it's time to smoke our brisket. And right now it's only about 2:30 in the afternoon. Now let's talk about our setup. I'll be using the Z-Grill's hickory flavor of wood pellets. I'll go ahead and get the pellet smoker hopper filled right now so I don't have to do it later. The conditions, well, it's supposed to be cold. And now it is 9:48 and I'm going to go ahead and get the pellet grill started. I'll get the Z-Grills turned on, and tonight I'm just going to set the temperature to 220 degrees. I'm going to be smoking this brisket fat side up on the top shelf. This allows me to use the convection in the pellet grill. Since I'm going to be using the top shelf, I can also put a sheet pan on the bottom shelf and use that as a drip pan. It's also going to deflect some of that heat coming up from the fire pot. Now I've smoked brisket on this grill, fat side down on the bottom shelf as well, and I just think on the top shelf, fat side up, letting the convection work really works better for this setup. It is now 9:55. The Z-Grills has come up to temp, so I'm going to also add some water to that sheet pan that I have in the multitasker. And now that I have everything completely set up, it's time to get the brisket on. Since this is a long overnight cook, I just took the brisket straight out of the refrigerator and put it on the top rack of the Z-Grill's multitasker. And it's now 10:07. And here's another neat little toy that the ThermalWorks company puts out. It's called the RH Spot. We have a relative humidity of 63.9. It is also 62.3 degrees outside. And after 2 hours, here's what our pellet situation looks like. So far, it hasn't burned through many at all. Now let's take a look at our brisket. As you can see, it is just barely moving along. It barely even looks like anything has happened to this brisket after 2 hours. So we'll close this up, and the next time we look at this brisket, it'll be in the morning. Now here we are 7 hours later, and let's take a look at our brisket. 7 hours later, I was really surprised on how few pellets we've actually gone through overnight when it was, well, it's cold for where I am. It is 49.6 degrees and the relative humidity is still really high, 72.1%. Now we'll check on our brisket and check out this color. It's really looking good at this point. I really love doing these briskets on the top shelf. We'll get a quick temperature reading and it looks like it's about 173 degrees. And now I'll just get this closed up and prepare to wrap the brisket. Today I'm going to be using some butcher's paper and I like to spray that down just to make it more pliable. Now we'll go grab that brisket and set it right in the middle of that butcher's paper. And also don't forget to close the lid to the pellet grill because an open lid promotes hopper fires. So get that lid closed. Now we'll just get the brisket wrapped, and when I was done wrapping my brisket, it looked like this. And now I'll just get the brisket back on to the top shelf of the multitasker. Now I'll go ahead and get my thermometer probe set up so that I can monitor the internal temperature. And all of that didn't take very long at all. It's 7:27 in the morning. It is now 9 a.m. and let's just take a minute to verify the brisket's internal temperature. It's starting to feel a little bit better outside. The humidity has gone down to 67% and the temperature has gone up just a little bit to 52.1 degrees. Taking a look at our temperature, and the temperature really hasn't moved at all. Take a look at this. I am probing 174, 173 degrees. So we'll just get that closed and give it about 2 more hours. 2 hours later, it is now 11 a.m. Now let's take a look at our brisket. The brisket wrapper is now saturated from the fat on the brisket, which is a good thing. That's exactly what we want our wrapper to look like. The Z-Grill's probe thermometer has the internal temperature at 197 degrees, which is really a huge jump from 2 hours earlier. Now we'll just double check that with our ThermoWorks ThermoPop 2, and the ThermoWorks has it at 199 degrees. And that's why I love to have a ThermoWorks product on hand. It's always great to double check any temperature reading with one of these ThermoWorks thermometers. And now we'll do the ultimate test, and that's probe for tenderness. And I'm just going to use the probe from the ThermoWorks thermometer and try to find any tight spots in our brisket. So the brisket is still feeling a little tight to me, so I'll get that lid closed and I'm going to give this another hour. It's been an hour later. It is now 12 o'clock. Now the brisket still feels a little tight to me. So we're going to close the lid and give it a little more time. Now remember, we're cooking this brisket at 220 degrees, so you're not going to see a lot of temperature movement. And that's why an hour later at 1 o'clock, we're going to give it another check. This time, when we check our brisket, it feels super smooth. There are no tight spots, and now it is time to rest our brisket. One of my favorite things about the Z-Grill's multitasker is this keep warm button. Whenever I rest my briskets, I simply push this button. It's going to adjust the temperature all the way down to 165 degrees. Not only will it allow your brisket to cool off and rest, but it's also going to keep it warm for however long you need to keep it warm without extending the cooking of the brisket. Now a couple of hours later, it is 3:30. Now I'm going to just go ahead, shut off the Z-Grills and let it sit on the pit until I'm ready to eat it at about 4:30. All right, it's an hour later. It is now 4:30 and it is time to check out the results of our cook. We'll simply take that off of the Z-Grills and get it onto our board. Next, I'll then unwrap the brisket. And I think we'll just go straight for the money shot. I'll cut this down in between the point and the flat and check out this cross section. This brisket is clearly juicy and the smoke ring is beautiful. Now we'll just get a slice off and check out this drape. Beautiful. And here you can see that the juices continue to flow. And now finally we get to taste the results of our hard work. Take a look at the smoke ring that the multitasker produced. Beautiful. And yeah, it really is a great tasting brisket. Now I'll just show you a couple of slices off the flat and everything was fantastic. Now, if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, go ahead, subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching A View to a Grill. I'll see you guys next time. Take care, y'all.